My brother burned down my restaurant after I refused to give him 50%. Now he's in prison, and I used his $250,000 inheritance to rebuild bigger. I'm a 30-year-old male who has been working in finance for the past 8 years. I live in a small house on Kansas City's south side which I paid $400,000 for since it was a decent area. Years of working 60-hour weeks and diligent budgeting helped me earn every dime. Growing up, the dynamic in our house was very evident. Caleb, a man, was the golden child, and I was simply present. Caleb, 4 years younger than me, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Got a D in math? The teacher had it out for him. Did he quit his third job in 6 months? The work environment was not supportive. Meanwhile, I was under continual investigation. You need to be more mature. Set a better example. That's what older brothers do. I'd heard it so many times that I could recite it in my sleep. The truth is, I didn't grow used to it because it felt comfortable. I grew accustomed to it because I realized early on that the less I anticipated from my parents, the less upset I would be. It was about survival. My high school years were very tough. Caleb was praised for making JV basketball, but my parents skipped my academic decathlon state finals when I finished second. Someone had to take Caleb to his game, I was told when I returned home with a silver medal. The medal ended up in my desk drawer and was never discussed again. For college, I worked 2 jobs to pay my own tuition at Missouri State, while Caleb received a free ride to Mizzou courtesy of my parents. They even got him a new Civic as a graduation present. Me? I received a hard handshake and a "we expect great things from you" speech. Only one person in that house made me feel as if I was seeing my grandfather. He was not affectionate or emotional, but he demonstrated love in ways that counted. When I came over, there'd be a cup of black coffee ready for me. "A kid like you doesn't need sweets. You need to stay sharp," he said. When my computer died at my first job and I couldn't afford to replace it, a tiny sum of money appeared in my account the next day. When I called to thank him, he simply stated, "It's from my savings. Not much, but enough so you don't have to struggle alone." He never made a big fuss about it and never mentioned it again. But I've never forgotten it. My grandfather was a World War II veteran who worked as a machinist for 40 years. Hard as nails but fair. He taught me how to replace my own oil, repair a leaking faucet, and invest intelligently. Don't ever rely on anyone else to build your life, he'd advise me as we worked on his old Chevy in the garage. He attended all of my graduations, including high school, college, and my finance certification ceremony. Each time he'd give me a card with a $100 bill and a letter that simply read, "Proud of you." It was short and simple, but it meant everything. My grandfather died, and I lost the only person in my family who ever appreciated me for who I was. After the funeral, we convened at Attorney Charles's office for the will reading. My grandfather had methodically split everything. $200,000 for Caleb and me, and $100,000 for my parents. Caleb and I would share 50-50 ownership of the house where my parents and Caleb lived. The attorney stated my grandfather's reasons clearly. Because your parents have always showed partiality to Caleb, he could not trust them to administer the estate honestly. He was concerned that if he left everything in their hands, Ethan might end up with nothing. The expression on my parents' faces was stunning. My mother's mouth actually hung open, while my father's cheeks turned a striking shade of crimson. Caleb gazed at his shoes, reluctant to meet anyone's gaze. It turns out that my grandfather had sold his own home for $600,000 before his death. That is where the money came from. He had meticulously organized everything to ensure that I would not be taken advantage of when he left. I transferred $200,000 into my account and knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. Working in finance taught me that money that sits idle loses value quickly. So I decided to create a restaurant, not because I enjoyed cooking, but because I saw it as a strong business with the potential to generate consistent income, if well managed. I'd done my homework and spent months investigating the Kansas City food industry. In the Crossroads district, I discovered a market need for upmarket comfort food. The location offered good foot traffic, a reasonable rent, and was close enough to the business district to draw lunchtime customers. I spent approximately $180,000 to begin the business. I hired an experienced chef named Andra, whom I had met through a client. He was quite well trained in New Orleans and had previously worked at some high-end establishments before deciding on something smaller where he could exercise more creative control. The restaurant became both his kitchen and my commercial enterprise. I did not quit my day job. I continued to work in finance while employing a manager I could trust to handle front-of-house operations. The restaurant opened, so I invited everyone, including my parents and Caleb. I hoped they'd finally be proud of what I had accomplished. The facility had already received great local evaluations, and we were booked solid for the first 2 weekends. Instead, right in the middle of the celebration, my mother leaned over and said, "You should have partnered with Caleb on this. He's always wanted to own a restaurant." In that moment, my accomplishment became a squandered chance for my brother. Caleb spent the whole opening night acting like he owned the establishment, criticizing the menu to Andra's face, instructing the waitstaff on how to do their duties, and loudly stating to guests that he was consulting on the business side. I smiled but said nothing. I was used to it. The early days were terrible. I worked my financial job from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., and then went directly to the restaurant till midnight. Weekends were spent solely at the restaurant, dealing with everything from supplier issues to staffing problems. I hadn't had a day off in months, but it was worth it. We had regular customers, excellent reviews across all platforms, and were even recognized in the local paper as one of the top 10 new restaurants to try in Kansas City. The company was producing a profit sooner than I had anticipated, and I was creating something I could be proud of. While I was starting a business, Caleb was spending his wealth on parties, VIP tables, rental sports cars, and the works. He spent $200,000 in less than a year. I found out through friends and social media photos featuring him slamming bottles at clubs with captions bragging about his high life. His Instagram account became a collection of poor financial mistakes. One week, he'd post about his new $5,000 wristwatch. The next was a weekend vacation to Vegas when he crushed the tables. The week after that, he was standing in front of a rented Lamborghini as if it were his. What made matters worse was learning that he had been telling everyone that the restaurant was a family company. He even invited possible business partners to dinner, introducing himself as the owner. Andra told me later that Caleb had given his personal card to suppliers, claiming that he made all purchase decisions. One night my bar manager called me aside and showed me a credit card receipt for a $700 tab that Caleb had attempted to claim as costs. When confronted, Caleb simply shrugged and remarked, "What's the big deal? We're family. The money all stays in the same pot." Then he made his girlfriend Vanessa pregnant. Caleb told her that she assumed he was a prosperous company owner. She was shocked to learn that he was unemployed and broke. But this didn't deter Caleb from his entitled demeanor. If anything, the pregnancy fueled his desire to acquire my business. That's when the actual family turmoil began, with me in the center of things. My mother called me on a Saturday morning and invited me to an important family meeting. When I arrived, the house was full of around 20 relatives, largely from my mother's side. The setup was evident. They were staging an intervention, but not the one you might anticipate. The living room had been reconfigured to face the sofa, with 2 empty chairs, one for me presumably, and one next to my mother. The remainder of the family sat in a semicircle, as if they were attending a tribunal. My father stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, giving me the same disapproving look I'd grown up with. Among the familiar faces, I noticed 2 unknown men sitting to either side of Caleb. His best friend Travis, a man with a shaved head and sleeve tattoos who had been in and out of jail for petty larceny, and my cousin Jake, whom I hadn't seen in years. Apparently he had been staying at my parents' house for months. My mother stood up to announce that Vanessa was pregnant, and that they were planning a wedding. Everyone applauded, and I mumbled a brief congratulations to Caleb. Before my mother said anything, the phony grins in the room warned me what was going to happen. Aunt Linda continued staring between Caleb and me with an expectant expression. Uncle Rob was nervously checking his wristwatch. My cousin Stephanie, whom I hadn't seen in years, appeared to be deeply involved in family affairs. But my mother wasn't done. She stood again, this time looking directly at me. "Our family is about to welcome a new member. Caleb and Vanessa are starting a new journey. But I understand that beginning a family isn't easy, especially since Caleb still doesn't have a stable job." Then she looked me directly in the eyes and dropped the bomb. "Ethan, I know you've worked hard. I'm truly proud of everything you've accomplished. But today, I want you to think bigger. Think about your brother. Think about the child you're about to have in your life." So there it was. "I think you should make Caleb a co-owner of your restaurant. After all, he needs a steady income and family businesses should stay in the family. He deserves an equal share without having to put in any money." I could hear family nod in agreement. One even added, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "That's right. Ethan's the older brother. He should take care of his own." The room felt as if it were closing in. They weren't just waiting for my response. They expected me to say yes, as if it was already settled. I sat there for a whole minute, peering into my glass. My mother was staring at me when I replied, "Are you serious? That restaurant is something I built with everything I had. I put $180,000 into it. I work 80-hour weeks managing it, and now you're telling me I should just hand over half to Caleb for nothing? I'm never going to agree to that." She responded immediately, her voice dripping with entitlement. Ethan, your brother is unemployed and about to become a father. We're family. It wouldn't even affect you to share. You're being completely selfish. Can you let your nephew be born without anyone caring for him? I stood up, unconcerned about the folks staring. Then where's the $200,000 he inherited from Grandpa? Caleb rushed in with a scripted response, his voice silky with practiced innocence. I invested it with a friend, but the deal fell through and I lost everything. I couldn't help laughing. You're lying. You spent it all partying for the past year. Don't think I didn't know. Should I show everyone the pictures of you throwing money around at strip clubs? Or the receipts from the 3 motorcycles you bought and crashed? Caleb immediately lowered his head, but not before I noticed a spark of hatred in his eyes. Travis leaned over and spoke to him, glaring at me. Before anyone could intervene, I resorted to my parents. I'm not making him co-owner of my restaurant. I built that business through my own hard work while he was busy pissing away his inheritance. If you want it badly, give me $200,000 for his half. I'll make him a partner. You can do whatever you want. Give it to Caleb. Give it to his kid. I don't care. That's when my father sprang up, grabbed his drink and tossed it at me. Watch your tone. I'm still your father, and you're not going to disrespect me in front of this family. The room went completely silent. Aunt Linda gave a gasp. Stephanie covered her mouth. Even Caleb appeared stunned. I wiped my face with my sleeve, calmly took my coat, and proceeded to the door. Thanks for reminding me where I stand in this family, I murmured, taking one last look at each of them before going out. I drove home silently. My phone was continually buzzing with texts and calls from various family members, some apologizing, others emphasizing why I should aid Caleb. I disregarded them all. My parents called and texted me nonstop. My mother alternated between guilt trips, I didn't raise you to be so selfish, and faux sweetness, we're just trying to help your brother start a family. My father was more direct. You owe this to your brother. I blocked their phone numbers, but they began showing up at my house and the restaurant. Caleb and Travis stormed in during dinner service one night, accusing me of stealing from my own family and demanding part of the restaurant. I had to get them escorted out. The personnel became nervous. My host quit after Caleb turned up one night and threatened to fire her if he took over. 2 servers requested alternate schedules to avoid his visits. Andra stayed firm, but I could tell the frequent drama was getting to him. I spoke with a lawyer about getting a restraining order, but he warned me that without actual threats of violence, it would be difficult to enforce. The best they could offer was a cease and desist letter, which I personally delivered to my parents' home. A few days later, my mother arrived at my office building and caused such a disturbance in the lobby that security had to escort her out. My employer called me that afternoon to convey his concern about personal difficulties influencing my professional environment. I assured him it would not happen again, but I could see my reputation had suffered. The situation became more serious. Andra burst in as I was taking inventory in the back office. Caleb's out front arguing with the hostess. He's demanding to be seated at a reserved table. I went out and discovered Caleb high as a kite, getting in the face of our 22-year-old hostess. Get out, I instructed. You're not welcome here anymore. Screw you, he muttered. This should be my place. Dad was right about you. You've always been a selfish piece of trash. I maintained my voice level. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the cops. That was when he lunged at me. We collided into a table, sending glasses and dishes smashing across the floor. Customers ran away as we labored. Caleb was high, but he still managed to deliver a powerful blow to my jaw. I wrestled him to the floor and pinned his arms. You think you're better than me? He asked. You always have. But I'll show you. You'll see what happens when you mess with me. Security separated us. As they carried him out, Caleb yelled, If I can't have it, you won't either. You hear me? That night I submitted a police report, which detailed the assault and threat. The authorities took witness accounts but emphasized that without additional evidence of an actual plan to commit arson, they could only arrest him with simple assault and trespassing. Caleb was released on bail the following morning. Following that, things went quiet. There is no indication of Caleb. No calls, no threats, and no appearances. After reading the police report, I began to suspect that he had backed off. Perhaps he realized he couldn't frighten me into giving him what he needed. I should have known better. The restaurant faced immediate penalties. Several reservations were canceled after learning about the fight. Yelp reviews noting the awkward family conflict began to appear. I had to hire a security guard to stand at the gate during work hours, something I had not accounted for. Andra gave me a panicked call. The restaurant's on fire. I just got a call from the security company. The fire department is there now. I threw on clothes and dashed across town, avoiding every red light. From 3 blocks away, I could see an orange glow against the night sky. By the time I arrived, the street had been sealed off by fire vehicles, their lights flashing across the faces of the assembled crowd. I rushed over to discover my eatery in flames. The firefighters were doing their best, but it was evident that the damage would be significant. I stood there, watching everything I had built burn to the ground. The fire chief approached me as daylight broke. "We've got it contained, but I'm sorry to say there's not much left inside. Any idea how it might have started?" I told him about Caleb's threat from the police report. "I can't prove it was him," I responded, "but I know it was." The next morning I gave a statement to the police and fire investigators, outlining my thoughts about Caleb's threat and the brawl at the restaurant. Detective Harper, the woman assigned to the investigation, took thorough notes on the most recent family conflict. "We will conduct a thorough investigation," she stated. "But arson cases are complex and can take time to build. We need to establish not just that it was arson, but who did it beyond a reasonable doubt." After I left the police station, I called Caleb. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey bro, what's up?" His tone was easygoing, as if we were simply catching up. "You know exactly what's up." "No idea what you're talking about." I could practically hear the smirk over the phone. "The restaurant burned down last night." A pause. "That's terrible. Insurance covers it?" "Cut the crap, Caleb. I was home all night. Ask Travis. He crashed on my couch." Another pause. "Maybe it was electrical. Those old buildings, wiring goes bad. You're going to regret this." He chuckled. "Regret what? Being home asleep while your investment went up in smoke? Good luck proving otherwise." I hung up knowing 2 things. He had undoubtedly done it, and he believed he was untouchable. This would be his error. The fire investigation team took samples from the area, examined burn patterns, and gathered evidence. They officially classed it as arson. Someone had broken in through the back entrance and sprayed accelerant in several areas. The surveillance cameras had been turned off, but they had missed one. Andra put a new camera in the kitchen to monitor food deliveries. The film was not spectacular, but it did show 2 men. One looked like Caleb, while the other resembled Travis. They were slowly pouring stuff onto the floors and counters before lighting a match. However, their faces were not distinct enough for a definitive identification. I spent the next few weeks dealing with insurance adjusters, soothing displaced staff, and fielding regular inquiries from suppliers and consumers. The financial impact was tremendous. I had insurance, but there was a high deductible, and business interruption coverage only went so far. The investigation continues. I contacted Detective Harper on a frequent basis. They were collecting data from mobile phone towers, questioning prospective witnesses, and painstakingly constructing their case. My insurance company dispatched their own investigators, who required detailed paperwork because arson incidents automatically initiate fraud investigations. My folks arrived at my residence uninvited. It was a Sunday morning, and I was examining documentation for an insurance business. I opened the door to find them standing there, as if they hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk about Caleb," my mother insisted, pushing past me into the living room. My father followed, his expression stern. "The police came to our house with questions about Caleb's whereabouts the night of the fire." I shut the door and stood with my arms crossed. "What do you want me to do about that?" My mother's voice cracked. "They're treating him like some kind of criminal. He might have made a mistake, Ethan, but he's still your brother." A mistake? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He burned down my business. He destroyed the livelihoods of everyone who worked there. That's not a mistake. That's a felony." My father came forward. "Son, we're asking you to drop the charges. Tell the police you don't want to pursue this. Caleb is facing serious prison time." "Good," I replied firmly. "He should be." My mother began crying. "How can you be so cold? We're your family. Don't you care what this is doing to us? Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. I can barely sleep." "And whose fault is that?" I inquired. "Caleb did this, not me." My father shouted. "If you had just helped him when he needed it." "Stop right there," I interrupted him. "Don't you dare put this on me. Caleb is an adult who made his own choices. And so are you. You enabled his behavior his entire life. And now you're surprised when he burns down a building because he didn't get what he wanted?" My mom grabbed my arm. "Please, Ethan, if you ever love this family, you'll help your brother now. He has a child on the way. Do you want your niece or nephew growing up with their father in prison? I pulled away from her. Caleb should have thought about that before he committed arson. You've always been jealous of him, my father remarked, his tone chilly. This is your chance to finally destroy him, isn't it? I approached the door and held it open. I think you should leave. My mother replied, Your grandfather would be ashamed of you, as they walked away. He didn't raise you to turn your back on family. No, I responded. He raised me to stand up for myself. Something you never taught me. After they had departed, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall for a while. Their visit verified what I already knew. They would always prefer Caleb over me, no matter what he did. In their perspective, I was the evil guy because I did not sacrifice myself to protect him from the consequences. A breakthrough occurred from an unexpected source. The proprietor of a gas station 2 blocks from the restaurant provided crystal clear security footage. Caleb and Travis had purchased and filled 2 petrol cans, both readily visible, with credit cards bearing their identities. When authorities executed search warrants at their homes, they discovered Caleb's texts outlining the scheme. If I can't have half the restaurant, neither can he. They also discovered garments containing traces of accelerant, which matched what was used in the fire. The district attorney's office filed formal charges against Caleb and Travis, and they were arrested. The charges were second-degree arson, conspiracy, criminal mischief, and insurance fraud. Travis immediately began negotiating a plea agreement to testify against Caleb in exchange for lower charges. I was at work when Detective Harper called to inform me that they were in custody. Caleb was finally going to face the consequences. The day after Caleb was arrested, I drove him to the county jail. I needed to see his face. When they brought him into the visitor's room, he was unshaven, had bloodshot eyes, and was dressed in an orange jumpsuit. But first he smiled at me. Come to help me, big brother? He remarked, reclining back in his seat. I simply stared at him. Why? The restaurant was more than just my business. It was the primary source of income for 26 employees. He leaned forward, his smile vanishing. Because you're a selfish jerk who has always gotten his way. You believe you're better than me? I nearly laughed. Handed to me? I toiled for everything I have. You are the one who has had everything handed to him his entire life. Screw you, he yelled. You could have made me a partner. It would only have required one signature. But no. You had to keep everything for yourself. It was mine to keep, I replied gently. I created it with my own money and work. And now it's gone. He smiled, the crooked smile returning. How does it feel knowing I took it from you? I stood up. Caleb, you will be in prison for years. Was it worthwhile? His smile wavered. Mom and Dad will take me out. They always do. I turned to leave. Not this time. After visiting Caleb, I met with attorney Charles to discuss the house that my grandfather had left for Caleb and me. It was also time to take action on that front. What are my options regarding the property I co-own with Caleb? I inquired after clarifying the circumstances. Charles looked over the will again. Because you and Caleb co-own the property, you have the authority to force a partition sale. Given Caleb's present legal difficulties, this is a good time. Your parents have no legal right to stay if both owners desire to sell. How quickly can we move on from this? I inquired, already knowing my decision. I can file the petition today, Charles explained. Given the conditions, we may perhaps speed up the process. Your parents are likely to oppose it, but given Caleb's legal predicament, they don't have much to stand on. Do it, I instructed. The criminal case is handled by the district attorney's office, Charles stated. As the victim, you will be asked to provide testimony and evidence, but the state will prosecute the case. My advice is to cooperate fully with the prosecution. Make sure they understand how this crime affected you and your staff. Over the next few months, I did exactly that. I gave the prosecution everything they needed. Financial records proving my investment in the restaurant. Employee payroll information demonstrating the livelihoods impacted, and detailed reports of Caleb's threats and previous actions. I also made a detailed chronology of events leading up to the fire, along with screenshots of Caleb's social media posts documenting his spending sprees, recordings of his disturbances at the restaurant, and witness testimonies from employees he'd mistreated. Meanwhile, the wheels of justice moved slowly. Caleb's counsel filed move after motion for delays, arguing that more time was needed to prepare his defense. The district attorney advised me that this was common procedure, particularly in cases when the evidence was overwhelming. During this time, I worked on rebuilding. The insurance claim procedure dragged on as they looked into every detail of the fire to make sure I wasn't involved. They claimed that it was standard procedure, but it was extremely frustrating for the sufferer. I had to produce years of financial data, go through many interviews, and deal with countless paperwork. Regarding the house, the partition action required some time to go through the courts. My parents battled it, claiming difficulty and attempting to postpone, but the judge eventually found in my favor. The house had to be sold and the money were split between Caleb and myself. Given Caleb's incarceration, his portion was placed in a court-supervised trust until the criminal matter was resolved. My parents were forced to leave the house they'd lived in for decades, where I had grown up feeling like a second-class citizen. They had to severely downsize. I didn't feel satisfied when I saw the moving trucks, just a strange feeling of closure. The home sold for $500,000. My portion of $250,000 was released to me instantly. Caleb's part was held in escrow until the outcome of his case, as potential recompense for the arson damages. During this time, Vanessa gave birth to a child called Mason. I've never met him. My parents sent me images with passive-aggressive messages like, "Your nephew you refuse to acknowledge," and "Family you're turning your back on." I erased all of them without responding. The financial impact of the fire was devastating. While waiting for the insurance reimbursement, I had to use my funds to assist some of my employees who were struggling. Andra declined offers from other places, remaining loyal as we plotted our comeback. I promised him a stake in the new location if we rebuilt. Finally, Caleb's trial date came. By then, Travis had already agreed to a 3-year plea agreement in exchange for his testimony. The trial was very brief. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, gas station receipts, text messages, Travis's testimony, and forensic evidence from the fire scene. On the second day, I testified about the family gathering, Caleb's threats, and the incident at the restaurant. Caleb's attorney attempted to portray it as a blown-out family fight, implying that Caleb had no intention of burning down the business. The jurors did not buy it. After only 6 hours of deliberation, they returned a guilty decision on all counts. Caleb was sentenced to 8 years in jail for arson and associated offenses, with the chance of parole after 5. The judge also ordered him to pay nearly $150,000 in restitution for losses not covered by insurance, which would be deducted from his portion of the house proceeds. As the bailiff dragged Caleb away, he gazed at me with hatred. My parents sat on the row behind him, my mother sobbing into her hands and my father staring ahead with a blank expression. They did not acknowledge me at all. My mother texted me the day after the sentencing, asking if we could meet. I agreed. When I arrived, they were already sitting at a corner table. My mom's eyes were red and puffy. My father looked 10 years older. "You got what you wanted," my father said the moment I sat down. "Are you happy now?" I did not take the bait. I did not want any of this. Caleb made his decisions. 8 years, my mother said softly, her voice breaking. "Our son will be in prison for 8 years because you couldn't forgive him." Forgive him? I shook my head in amazement. He committed arson. He destroyed my business. What were you expecting to happen? "We expected you to be a brother," my father snarled, leaning across the table. "You could have requested leniency. You could have explained to the judge that it was merely a family issue." "It wasn't just a family dispute," I answered quietly. "He committed a serious crime." My mother reached for my hand, but I resisted. "But he is still your brother. Your flesh and blood. Is that intended to excuse everything?" I asked. "We're done with you," my father declared, his voice shaking with wrath. "You're no son of mine. As far as we're concerned, we only have one child now," I said before turning to leave. "And he's in prison." My mother's voice accompanied me to the door. "Don't contact us ever again. You have ruined this family." I went out without looking back, feeling strangely relieved. The last ties had been cut. The insurance company finally paid out the full amount. $230,000 for the facility and equipment, $45,000 for business interruption, and $25,000 for inventory loss. I now had $550,000 to rebuild after receiving my part of the house sale proceeds. Rebuilding the eatery took some time. Finding a suitable new location was an issue. I chose a more expensive location in the River Market District that had higher foot traffic and exposure. Obtaining permissions and clearances required time. Construction and renovations took months. Throughout the process, I kept in touch with my former employees, offering them promotions, assisting them in finding temporary work, and promised them their positions back when we reopened. Andra stayed with me the entire time. He helped design the new kitchen, tested menu items at pop-up events we held to preserve our name in the neighborhood, and never wavered in his dedication to our goal. I hired Logan, a new general manager with experience turning around troubled businesses. He assembled a team of servers he trusted, folks who provided exceptional service. The new location cost more, but it provided better visibility and parking. The previous tenant had failed as a gastropub, so the kitchen infrastructure was already in place, saving us a lot of money on renovations. I arranged a lease with the opportunity to purchase after 5 years. I was thinking in the long term. Despite everything that happened during the rebuild, 3 separate investors approached me after hearing about my experience. They provided capital in exchange for stock. I turned them all down. After what happened to Caleb, I wasn't ready to give up any control over my business, no matter how appealing the offer appeared. The new eatery has finally opened. Bigger, better designed. In a more prominent position. We upgraded everything. Better kitchen equipment, a customized wood-fired grill, a proper bar with craft cocktails, a private eating area for events. Andra designed a menu that combined his New Orleans background with Kansas City ingredients to create upscale comfort food that customers couldn't get enough of. Opening night was more than I could have anticipated. Every table is booked, there's a line outside the door, a wait list that goes 2 weeks out. Social media exploded with culinary photos and favorable feedback. As I was greeting visitors in the dining area, Detective Harper and her husband arrived. "Thought you might like an update," she remarked as I sat them at our best table. "Your brother's appeal was denied. I also heard that your folks had to sell their automobile to pay rent. Apparently, they spent all of their money on Caleb's legal defense." I nodded, feeling neither satisfied nor sympathetic. "Thank you for letting me know. Dinner has been prepared for tonight." As I resumed my rounds, I struck up a conversation with a table of old-time regulars. They were among the first to book after we announced the reopening. One of them raised their glasses and said, "To come back stronger." The remainder of the dining area overheard and joined in the toast. I had to go into the kitchen for a moment to collect myself. That night we sold $15,000, more than doubling our best night at the previous site. By the 3rd month, we were making a constant profit, and needed to create a waiting list for weekend reservations. I gave Andra 15% ownership of the company, which he accepted with a strong handshake. Logan received 5%, with the possibility to increase based on performance. Those judgments were more than just sound business decisions, they were about assembling a team dedicated to our success. I got a letter from Vanessa. She said that she and Caleb had broken up while he was in prison and that she was raising their son alone. She apologized for her role in the family strife and asked if I would like to see my nephew. I have not made a decision on that yet. My relationship with my parents is non-existent. They send me cards for my birthday and Christmas, generally with guilt-ridden messages about family and forgiveness. I do not respond. Meanwhile, the eatery is thriving. We've added lunch service, hired 3 new chefs to work with Andra, and are exploring opening a second location across town. The fire was intended to ruin everything I had constructed. However, it forced me to rebuild something better. Later, as the final customers had left and the staff was finishing up, Andra brought out beverages. "To rise from the ashes," he declared, pouring. We clinked glasses, and I gazed around at my new restaurant, which was growing despite Caleb's attempts to ruin it. Sometimes getting even isn't the greatest way to exact revenge. It is moving forward and succeeding while they remain trapped in the mess they created.